Ever wondered whether we need politics and or politicians and leaders? This is a very powerful question that many people apparently have been asking, but well, most likely not too vocally. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss different topics about spirituality and introspection, and this time this video will be a bit introspective on a topic called politics, but the point is more like leadership in general, because I'm not interested in being part of politics, being politician or having to do anything with that, because it's all so sluggish and it's all about agendas that you must fulfill for others. It's not something about your free will, just like nothing regarding this society seems to be bound to free will. It's all about being bound to a certain mainframe that dictates everything that you should be thinking and doing and feeling. Well, not necessarily feeling, because feeling is kind of prohibited. There was a question long ago that was asked by a very wise person, and well, they asked, do you ever know why we have leaders? The wise person didn't give an answer. They simply let the people try to figure out why they have leaders. Now, the reason why we have society and leaders is mainly because, and only because, of people running away from ignorance. Nowadays we have been calling ourselves for so long a civilized nation, but we are so civilized we actually need markers to pinpoint different aspects. Okay, like for example, in restaurants you actually need to mark the toilets for men and toilets for women, and it actually has to be, this actually has to be taught, right? This sense of this sense of being and how to truly act, right, is always enforced in a way, or is reminded, mainly because, well, it's like they never trust you, right? Society never trusts you. That's why society always breeds you in a way that you're never good enough, starting from your parents usually, but especially school, and then at work. Well, these life cycles are apparently always there to remind that yourself is never good enough. Now, this is actually a very powerful truth, because yourself is never good enough. Now, English is a very occult language, and it has a lot of terms that are being used, and people have forgotten their true meaning. What do I mean by the self? Well, the self is technically an accumulation, as I've been presenting in previous videos. Indirectly, it is an accumulation of thoughts, ideas, emotions, feelings. You watch Reddits, read all sorts of things, you play different games, you associate yourself with people, and you share all sorts of opinions in between one another. So obviously this is, well, nothing else than that. You're taking some people's ideas, opinions, and you're identifying with those as if they are yours and yours only. That is why you also say yourself, right? You say yourself, it is something that is yours, but is not you specifically. Just like any other thing that you have, right? You say your cup, your car, your this, your that, but it's not you, right? It's just something that belongs to you, right? So yourself will never be useful to this society, because ultimately, well, no one is ever interested in the self, right? But people nowadays, being so fake and embracing this fakeness, being in this competition, who runs away from them, well, them how they are, because it's kind of hard to say in English just them, right? There's only own self, right? You don't have you. It's like when people run away from who they truly are, then, well, this also turned into a competition, right? This is kind of the root of all evils, because people aren't going to assume any responsibility. And the politicians that we have are nothing else than people who, belong to the population. They are just like you. They were born in families who didn't know how to raise them. Probably they had a head start, right? Or they knew how to lie or manipulate better. What way they followed and they ended up where they are? Well, the class of politicians will always be a mirror of the population. Those who, those who are, or basically those who should be represented by the political class. But the political class is actually represented by the populace, because the politicians come from the realm of the population themselves. And looking at the politicians of any country, you kind of can get a generalized sense of what the people of that country are like. Well, you shouldn't generalize it as a whole, but if your politicians are ignorant, chances are that much of your population, right, the country's population that you live in, well, big chances are that they're also ignorant as well. So why would we need leaders? Well, we always need leaders because people don't want to do a damn thing for their own good, and especially for the good of the others. Because as it's been said in socialism, right, and well, I'm not going to enter the realm of communism and socialism or do any sort of political regime comparison, but in socialism there was this idea that was well preached, and it says the good of the individual will always be the worst thing in the world. And if you don't believe me, well, just look at the world as it is, right? You have the good of the individuals, and it's always to the detriment of the others, right? We have so many narcissistic and sociopathic people who live to only their own good, right? And everyone else around them suffers. Now, of course, it's a separate case if those people really invite that suffering and they take that suffering as the normal, because those usually are a lost case. But look at democracy as it is, or corporacy, right? Corporatocracy, or whatever you want to call it, right? Some people rule the whole world, they gain as much power as they want, they always want even more power because they have all the money in the world, but still they live in the mindset of poverty, right? And they teach people that, they are poor because they are poor, right? Because of scarcity mindset, as New Age spiritualists say. But if you have all the power in the world, why are you still interested in getting even more and more power? It means you're obsessed with it, and well, technically the only reason why you're obsessed with something is because of survival, right? It's probably not the survival of the physical body because they have all the money in the world, but it's more like a survival of the self, right? It's much worse of a prison because when you're in survival mode, you're usually not conscious, so you can cause a lot of collateral damage, but usually you're not conscious because it's survival concerned. But when you are in the third chakra, right, when you are living there, and it's the survival of the self, you'll always end up as if the first thing that you don't have, your life is ruined, right? That is the reason why people overspend in games, people overspend on useless stuff, people do things that cost them greatly, but they just want to do those because they see other people mimicking the aspect of being happy doing those things, or probably they are happy and they want to feel fulfilled as well. But the problem is, as long as you're ignorant, you're never going to be fulfilled, because that's how things are. So the point about leaders, right? Leaders are always there, kind of slaves, right? To tell you a little, well, can't call it a story, but when I was in, I think, the 5th grade or 6th grade or whatever, there came this concept of, the chief of the class. I don't know how to call it in English exactly, right? Technically, you are a representative of the classroom, right? And obviously, since we were all taught in the same communist manner that, you always must be the best, and, you as children have to compete against your own kin, right? You had to almost fight your friends for the better marks. The point is, I also wanted to be the chief of the class. But, however, it turned out that fate, well, wasn't apparently kind with me. Or so I thought. It took me a while to realize that, to be the chief of the class, you actually had the responsibility of the whole class, which implied that at many times you would come 1 hour before classes would start, and at times you would also stay 1 hour after the classes end. So after the second election, I was kind of like, well, you know what, I think actually I'll pass the next time because, well, my time is somewhat more precious. I've got a lot of homework to do, and I would stay like late till 8, 9, 10 p.m. doing my homework, going to bed, then next day going to school to come back at 2 or 3 p.m., then doing a shitload of homework for the next 2 or 3 days, then be flooded with homework again, and well, that's how part of my childhood has been. Well, just a part apparently, because I also had some spare days and I also managed to spend some time with my own friends. So the point about this is people run away from responsibility. This is basically the principle of ignorance. You separate yourself from the others, you live in your ego, everyone else is lower than you, and you're always the best. You cannot accept anything else, and you will not accept to do anything else, even if it is for your own good or for the good of others. And especially the second one, you won't take it into account. So the point is, you always end up, as the victim, and victims always expect to be saved, right? Just like in that uh, little story with the Christian believer, right? The Christian believer in a village said that I believe in God no matter what, and I will trust God no matter what. It so happens that, a flood comes and, well, people start evacuating the town. And, well, the Christian is asked, do you want to flee? No, I believe that God will save me. Well, the people run. As the water starts growing, well, he jumps on a house and, well, the first lifeboat comes around and asks him if he wants to leave. No, he said, I believe my God will come and rescue me. A second boat comes. Well, I believe God will save me. By the time the waters were by him, a last boat comes by and asks him if he wants to leave, and said, no, I still believe God will save me. And this is how people are. Eventually the person drowned because, well, God is not going to move his little finger for you. You have to raise your own self towards divinity. Divinity is not going to cower itself to you. That's how things are. Something that is superior will not cower itself to a lower level of being, right? But we shouldn't look ourselves as, inferior, okay? We may be smaller in design and perception, but, the point is we are here and we should be, experiencing life. Now, people will always want leaders because those leaders are, in their opinion, the specific slaves, right? They are there and they are expected of to make different changes, right? So we have this society of sick people who still prefer to sleep in this, dream of ignorance, right? And they expect politicians and billionaires to move their finger and do stuff. Well, of course, some of them may be doing things. You can look at so many that, they actually present their plans in your face, and, people are still dumb enough to, expect them to do something, right? And what do billionaires do? Well, they imagine that they will end up on the moon, they want to build resorts there, they want to colonize Mars. So you can see how important your life struggles and the cunt virus is to them. Like, honestly, they're buying everything. It's like now when businesses are going down and everything is selling cheap, they're literally buying everything and literally everything, which clearly goes to show that they don't care about you. All they care is more power and more power, so obviously they're obsessed with survival, right? The survival of the self. Then everything that they purchase, everything that they create, I bet that once they create the first resort on the moon, it will be only for them, for the billionaires. And they will, in their inner circle, they will create huge prices, right, to justify their buying power, right? Because if you have all the money in the world and you're so obsessed with buying, then, well, most likely your life must really suck, because having so much theoretical power, because all that power is in their head, right? After all, money is nothing else than a byproduct of our collective agreement. We agree that money has that much of sense and power because what if one day people say, hey, you know what, let's actually quit it with this thing, okay? Like, why the fuck do we actually need money? Why do we actually need leaders? The only thing that we need to banish is ignorance, because once we banish ignorance and we teach people to have a certain level of sensitivity, right, there will be no more need of laws, because no one will kill anyone else, right? If you have a sense of compassion, sensitivity, right, sensibility, and also devotion, right, towards certain things like creational aspects of life, right, everything that you will do will be represented by your own truth, right? And the point is by the truth of the others, and the only truth is that, well, everywhere you go there is well-being and abundance, right? But unfortunately, leaders want you to not be abundant because you wouldn't be, expecting them to do stuff. And, well, people who always expect others to do things, they're also lazy, so they have all the time in the world to keep expecting. That is why the you see the society not evolving much because, well, people expect, leaders to do something, but at the same time, well, they won't be doing anything. Like, they're telling you their plans, they just want to exit this planet, which also shows you their level of, awareness and sensitivity to the planet, right? They might talk you into, those, tear-dropping dialogues and videos and motivational aspects, but when you see them that they want to leave this planet, you see how much responsibility they're willing to take. They allowed themselves, right, and their powers to be guided towards, the ignorance of people, so therefore to the detriment of people. We also accepted that. We turned this planet into, well, not a wasteland yet, but we laid waste to this planet, and now these people are the first ones to want to leave, right? Just like narcissists would. At the first sign of danger, their survival is triggered, so they will always be the first ones to leave. So hopefully this video answered this question of yours, and, well, hopefully you've realized why we kind of don't need leaders. If you need a case study, well, try a case study on my country, namely Romania, right? It's a country that for 30 years we lived entirely without politicians. We didn't have any politician to simply represent us. We only had them for very short times, but they were brought down because our history has always been like that. Whoever wanted to do something good always was brought down, and those who would do us bad, they would be kept because, well, apparently that's part of our, karma as a nation. So we only had politicians that kept selling literally every piece of land, every piece of historical monument and such, all our resources, our nationality, literally everything. Romania is a country that nowadays no longer exists. It only exists in the mind of people and, well, in geography books, because it is nothing else than a conclave, a colony of multinational entities, let's call them so. For 30 years, ever since socialism fell, the point is this country survived without politicians and leaders. We don't have any agriculture, or much of it. We have probably 1% of the industry that we had, as, in the Soviet age, we were, like both an agricultural and an industrial complex, right? A behemoth. And this was kind of rare in socialist countries because usually they would have either an industrial or agricultural focus, while Romania had both, and it did extremely good on both. However, well, when multinationals came, their only purpose was to simply sell and eradicate everything and bring consumerism to the point where, no one would want to do a thing because everything is given to you, but you have to work your life for, like $400 per month, which is like way beyond any measure of expectation. Is like almost inhumanly low salaries. But, the complacency of people still allows this. So the point is, if you're still not convinced that people are still ignorant enough that we need bosses, abusers and leaders, right? Well, keep sleeping and, well, happy dreams ahead, right? The Matrix is gonna take great care of you. All this being said, you are appreciated, take care of yourself, become more introspective, and you'll see that the answers that you're looking for are right there, hidden within you, and you have to reach a certain level of awareness to realize those. Preferably realize those rather than, mentally accepting them. So all this being said, you are appreciated, take care of yourselves. Ferenc on board, signing out.